All right, hi, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Quarantine and Create. I'm here with Jodi Lightner. She's an artist that we have presented right here in our very own High Gallery. Straight There and Back is the name of her show. Hi, Jodi.
Hi.
So thank you for being with us today. I just want to talk a little bit about your studio practice first, what it looked like before and what it looks like now. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I love studio time, so it's not a problem to have more of it. Right now I am in the middle of the spring semester at MSUB, so during the semesters I'm always balancing teaching and studio time. I take the day that I don't have any classes usually as a full studio day, which is helpful. Now though it's shifted a little bit since the sheltering and the quarantine. Because you would think I would have more studio time, but it's a little bit different while teaching. So I've definitely shifted some of my practices so that I can learn how to teach online. So I've been practicing with doing some video demonstrations in my studio, which is different. I normally don't try to videotape and capture what I'm trying to teach. It's usually in person. So it's been a fun challenge in that way.
Yeah, how has it been for your students? Are they responding pretty well? Are they adapting to the situation pretty well?
They're doing great. Everyone just is doing their best while trying to accomplish as much as we can. And there's a lot of conversation and feedback. So I have small classes, fortunately, and we've been doing a lot of video chats just to check in and catch up. And then most of the teaching comes via video demonstrations and narrated PowerPoints and as much like help and assistance as needed. So it puts a lot of ownership on the students to reach out if they don't quite understand anything, because I can't see their faces if they have a confused look on their face. So there's a different type of communication, and it's interesting to see which ones will still reach out via email or leave a message or reach out through the D2L shell that we have for our school. So it changes our interface a lot. I think we all miss greatly the natural conversations that we have and the dialogue that we have and the rapport that gets built in the studio as we're all working together, whether it's painting or discussing an article. I think that's what I miss most about the classroom setting being shifted, is our natural dialogue doesn't occur quite as naturally online. We have a hard time creating question and answer series. So there's a little bit more independent respond to it, a lot more writing versus a verbal processing that we're used to. In studio art, I find it fascinating that we do a lot of verbal processing in order to understand our art. We also do a lot of writing, but when we're first learning, it's so much talking. And for a lot of artists that are introverts, it can be a challenge. And I think that's where the studio classroom can be this haven where students learn how to share their work in a safe environment, where they learn to interact and trust others, where they learn about their process from what others share about them. And that's the part that I'm hoping will not be lost in this transition right now. Right. And fortunately, we had the beginning of the semester where the students really did bond together and create the rapport. And so they're still, some of them, especially upper division, are still reaching out and talking to one another and sharing their projects together. So it's helpful in that way to see that they're taking some ownership too.
Yeah, that's very good. That's good. And it's lucky we do have the capabilities of connecting, of right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about your current exhibit up at the Holter? It's called Straight There and Back. It's being traveled across Montana by the Montana Arts Gallery Directors Association. And right now, behind me is your piece, Gathered, 7 14-foot drawings on Mylar. So can you talk a little bit about that project?
Yes, yeah, that project, it's so fun, and I really love it in that space. So it's the first time I think they've been fully extended. So they've been shown in other places that are a little bit shorter, and that's the beauty of them, is that they kind of adapt to their surroundings. So these pieces, ironically, like a lot of pieces in the show have really spoken to our current situation, even though they were made several years ago. They're really about our networks and our communities and how far they are stretched or contracted together. So, the closeness of our connections or the stretchiness of our connections, like how will they really hold together in this network? So all of these rope nets are in various iterations of being like gathered and picked up and gathered and brought together. And I was thinking about that idea for this network, like, what is it like when we bring a community together? How are we being pulled apart because of distance, or how are we being like pulled together because of proximity or similarities? And thinking about that, I made these shortly after moving to Montana. So I was being transplanted to a new place. I was developing a new sense of community, and I was examining my relationships with all of the previous places that I had lived, and realizing that some of them held strong and some of them were stretched a little further. And I would never unknow those people, but I would always have a connection to them. It just might not be quite as close a knot together. So I see these ropes now being really maybe a symbol for our time. Like what is our ability to gather now? How can we still create a sense of community? And I appreciate what the Holter's doing to like continue that sense of community that the Art Museum has by presenting the work and creating an online presence more, and letting artists share. So that's where a lot of that work is coming from, and where it's what I would hope viewers would get from it. I love that it can be installed in many ways, because in the Holter right now, if there's a chance to see it before it closes on May 15th, what I really like is the viewers get to, hopefully, the viewers get to walk around it and become part of the encompassing ropes. Like you can get into the middle of them, you can see them. They have a real sense of three-dimensionality from a distance, but they are completely flat. Yeah. It is a piece of mylar. It's transparent. It's ink and acrylic on this thin translucent paper, and that's part of the mystery, is that they're supposed to have both a volume-esque quality, but yet it's just paper thin, just like many of our connections. Like we have to keep them strong. You have to stay connected.
Wow. Yeah. What a potent message during our time right now, really. And the mylar itself, I mean, it's so beautiful when you walk through. I mean, the ropes, the drawings are moving with your wind. And that's something that I really enjoy about it. And that's what I hope people can come into the museum before May 15th and see it, because it really is, I mean, there's nothing like it in person.
Yeah, it's, I think viewing art in person is huge, very, very important. I like to lead study abroad classes with my students, and that way they get to see art in person. And so obviously there's no trips happening this year, but anytime we can see art in person, it's good. So you see the physicality of it, you get the actual, like the light bouncing off the color. It's very, I don't know, sensory, a lot more sensory experiences.
Yeah. Well, I know that we are going to do a little screen sharing. Are there some specific pieces you want to pull up and we can talk about a little bit?
Yeah, let me share some images so you all can see what we're talking about. I first want to talk about this one. It's a little one in the, where is it located in the gallery, Rosemary?
It's just right behind me as you walk into the left. You can't see it right now, but as soon as you walk into the room, it's to the left.
Okay, so it is along the wall in the high gallery, and it is still space for waiting. And this piece it has 3 chairs that are seen from above, so you're seeing where we sit. I have used chairs frequently in my work to stand in for presence, for a figure, for space, for our personalities. And so these 3 specific chairs came from my grandparents' house after they were selling the farm and it was all moving along. And I was taken with the thought at the time that, like, we need to make sure that we have room for this transition, right? And so this transition is about like waiting for things to happen. And so the chairs represent the space where we wait for things. Like waiting rooms always have chairs in them, right? Because we're not very good at standing. We get impatient. When we're going to chill or we're going to like take a break, we frequently sit down. And so like waiting is not just resting, but it's active. And so like the chairs are sort of in active mode from the top. You're expecting something to land on them, but they just sit in the space waiting for somebody to use them. So that's where some of the chairs come from. And the environment then represents this idea that there's light strings, which could indicate party, but it also indicates just like space that's been created to commune together. And that's what the chairs are doing, whether they are themselves the figure in the piece or whether you see them as the space for the figure to come and interact with another one. So hopefully they all get filled. So that's still space for waiting in the gallery. Is there another one you'd like me to talk about? Why don't you suggest another one, Rosemary, and then I'll.
Let's see, the Envelope series. I'd like
Sure.
to talk a little bit about that. I see some of the work in the back on the back wall of your studio is similar.
Yeah, it is. Let's talk about the. So Envelope, it comes from a series I did about the Zeppelin Airships in 2017. And the Zeppelin airship was fueled by either hydrogen or helium, depending on what country they were built in. And as these ships were being made, I was looking at the both the history of them, the practice of air travel, and also the craze that people got into to travel on them. Like it was expensive, it was for the high class, it was prestigious, and they would take themselves and put themselves into this container and then fly through the air. And it was very quiet comparatively to our jet engines. But I found that the practice of humans putting themselves into containers for movement kind of puzzling sometimes. I maybe overthink it when I'm traveling by air and think about myself in this, I'm in an airplane and we're just moving, but you can't really see anything. So maybe they're just switching the scenery out below me and they're not really going anywhere. I'm like, oh, maybe not, who knows? So that we put ourselves into these things that envelop us. We have these cocoons. And this shape is, but you can see it especially on the left in the blue and the orange one, which is number 4. That cocoon shape that is orange is a motif that I've used recurringly in my work this idea that we surround ourselves with a security blanket of some sort, whatever that security blanket may be, whether it's relationships, whether it's thinking that our house is completely secure or our car is secure. Like we put trust in things that actually surround us. So that's where I took this Envelope series for the Zeppelin airships, was thinking about these cocoons that we put ourselves into. These 3 particularly, then I also was mirroring with that the cross section of the Zeppelin, which is a circular shape full of all these cross-cut forms and filled to the brim with bags filled with gas that would raise the Zeppelin into the air. So you've got both the cross-section of a Zeppelin and then the idea of the enveloped cocoon where we place our trust and our security in. So these are the 5 from that series that I would like to show you. And then there's one more from the Zeppelin series that talks about that same concept of the cocoon with a little bit more graphic drawing element that used the specific gondola on the left where the cockpit would be, and then the engine car on the right. And watching old footage of these films, like the servicemen that would be flying in them would just like scamper up and down ladders all over these engine cars, just hanging out in the middle of the air, high in the air. And as someone who's not particularly fond of heights, I was quite amazed at their ability to kind of clamber all over the outside of this giant balloon. But fascinating history, fascinating history.
Yeah, really, really, really fascinating. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
So the entire exhibit, Straight There and Back, is a sort of a sampling of your work from the last 10 years, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about Straight There and Back, what that means to you, and what the title of the exhibit is about?
Yeah, the title comes from one of the pieces in the exhibition, and I can share it with you in a little bit. And it's the idea that we have an ability to actually think about things while we're in a certain place. So as we are in our mind going someplace, we are actually in two places at one time. So Straight There and Back to me is the ability to mentally disengage and imagine something else in our mind, and then be brought right back to the present. It's the ability to be in two places at one time, or to see two perspectives at one time. So Straight There and Back to me emulates both the ability to look at things from different angles, as well as, maybe mentally envision another perspective while we're in a certain presence. And that's where I was taking it from. Historically, when I talk about this one, I talk about the idea that as a child, I always wanted to figure out how to walk on the ceiling. And so I would imagine the house turning upside down, and how I would navigate between the first floor and the second floor, with the stairs and the ceiling. Like, how would I navigate that movement? And then I would come back to reality and be just lying, with gravity in place. So that's the fun side of the story of where Straight There and Back came from. But there's more thoughts to it always. There's always more to it, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it came from. And if I can share it if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I would love to.
Here is let me share that with you. It helps the viewers, I think. There we go. So this would be Straight There and Back, the piece. And it is a diptych, and both sides of the diptych, the left and the right, I envision is two views of the same location. So you sort of see the punctum, the point where that meets together.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I did just want to mention really quick too, for our viewers at home, we do have a video tour of this exhibit, so you can see each piece. And that is up on our YouTube page, it's up on our Facebook page, and I believe there's a link to it on our Instagram as well.
And you did a lovely job. It was so fun. Yeah, it was very exciting.
So can you just tell us really quick, briefly, about the work that's behind you and what you're working on in your studio now?
Sure. The work behind me is from a series I call The Lives of Things. So I've been doing the last series that opened, recent work, is based off a book called The Lives of Things by Jose Saramago. So I've been using a lot of literature in my recent work that talks about our relationship to space. And these are books of fiction that were, this is a Portuguese writer, so it's been translated. And how do we interact and engage with the spaces around us and the relationship of the objects that we live with? So these two were exhibited in Wichita, Kansas in December and January. I've got some larger work here on your right, my right, I guess, that is based a little bit more off of Chinese sailing ships and sailing, and like that space that gets a little bit more I guess I think about it as like the ocean. Like I have to do a hand motion with it, right? We're kind of moving and we're swinging through space. And we can see, like, the idea that if matter wasn't opaque, we could see through all the layers and still see all of its important properties, but yet see the transparency of space. And I think that's why I love Mylar too.
I was going to ask.
It implies space could be transparent, and like we could see through things. And so that's this piece right here that you can see, these two pieces.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So do you have any upcoming exhibits, any upcoming shows that have been maybe postponed, canceled, or just anything scheduled? I know Straight There and Back will be traveling across Montana. So.
Right. So Straight There and Back is on an ongoing exhibition, and hopefully things will be moving again by May. So, and before that, And other than that, I'm working on another exhibition. So the dates are not confirmed yet, so I'll be sure to let everybody know when that happens. And I'm planning for a sabbatical term in the fall. So I will be spending the time doing some research and some intense studio time making a body of work. And I'm super excited about that season.
Fantastic. Oh,
yeah.
That's so great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, Jodi, thank you so much again for being with us. I think that the perspective, more detail about your work is really going to excite people, and it's definitely excited me. So thank you again and for sharing a bit about your studio practice during this time. And the Holter is going to continue doing these Quarantine and Create mini-series videos where I will go virtually into artist studios